Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. As always, in association with Andy's Man Club. Let's remember, it is okay to talk. This time, we are 67% British, 33% Irish. As always, we are 100% Giants. The only thing that came home from the Euros is Shane. Welcome home, Shane. But he's straight back to work, so he can't be with us this evening, unfortunately. So it's myself, it's Kevin, it's producer Craig, back with you to run through our linebackers in our latest state of play positional breakdowns. Plus, last night, episode 3 of Hard Knocks off-season aired, and we've got all the major talking points to look forward to very, very shortly. So spoiler alert, if you haven't managed to watch it yet, you may want to avoid a section of this show. That's how we're doing.
Yeah, good. Glad Shane's back in one piece. Everything's good. Obviously, he has to go straight back to work. God knows what he spent his time over in Germany, so he may have to do some overtime shifts to be able to recoup some of that spending. But yeah, really good to be on with you lads. State of play's been enjoying these. Wanted to get into the linebackers. Shane's a bit gutted he's not on for this one, but also Hard Knocks. What an episode!
Yes, it's getting exciting being able to watch it and then review it very quickly, almost just after, especially seeing as it's not that easy to get hold of, as we have repeatedly bitched and moaned about. Just for anybody who hasn't seen, we've retweeted one of our followers who messaged Sky Sports, and they said they're trying to work with the NFL, trying to get it, but there are no plans at the moment. I reached out to Dazen about it. I got the same thing. We're really sorry. We're trying to work it out with NFL Media and with HBO, but at the moment there is no updates. So unfortunately, we have to find alternative ways of getting hold of it. Obviously, please reach out to us on DM if you need to. We do have a way of getting hold of it, so just let us know.
Yeah, it's kind of poor, really, at the moment from the NFL media and the NFL UK media. It's disappointing that not everybody can watch it, and that we have to resort to other ways of finding it rather than, let's face it, we pay £160 a year for our DAZN subscription. For what? I mean, I say for what? I know we use it a lot during the season, but it's a big part of the off season this year, especially. So come on, sort us out, give it to us. But no, we've had to resort to alternative ways. So, yeah, it's a great episode last night, this morning, this afternoon, whenever you watched it, this evening in my case. But yeah, it's looking forward to talking about that. Apologies in advance if I do sound a bit nasal, just recovering from a bit of man flu. So trust me, the struggle is very real. But it's great to be back on after missing last week. Looking forward to chatting Hard Knocks, like I said, and getting into one of my favourite positions on the roster of linebacker as well. So looking forward to that. But as usual, if you're watching live, get your thoughts and questions in, drop them in the comments. We'll do our best to get them on screen. And don't forget to check out all of our socials, now streaming on Twitch too. Yeah. Just follow the links in the description, and feel free to give this video a big thumbs up if you are watching. As usual, we're going to start off with the latest Giant news. There's been a few stories that are sort of worth highlighting, and we're going to fire through them at a rate of knots. The Giants rookies and first-year vets reported to camp yesterday. That's right, camp. Camp is literally here right now. The vets aren't due to report until next Tuesday, but veteran quarterbacks and injured players are eligible to report tomorrow. Who can believe camp's here? Wow. Yesterday, news came out that rookie tight end Theo Johnson will start on the PUP or physically unable to perform list with a hip flexor injury. Art Stapleton reported that the hope is that this won't be a long-term issue. Players on the PUP list can be activated at any time before the season. The Giants will be holding a joint training camp practice with our lodgers, the noisy neighbours, the New York Jets, on the 21st of August. It will take place at the Jets Training Centre, the Atlantic Health Jets Training Centre. So at the Atlantic
Crap,
kind of,
Crap.
yeah, Atlantic Health. I mean, is it any worse than the Quest Diagnostics? It's all named after sponsors, isn't it? Really?
Pretty much.
Yeah, but and lastly, the Giants have been naming their top 100 players in their 10 player chunks. That's in their history. They've announced numbers 100 through to 71 already. Just going to run through the whole list. Starting off at 100, working in reverse order. Guard Rich Soybert at 100, 99 Brad Benson, 98 Eddie Price, 97 Hakeem Nicks, 96 Willie Williams, 95 Judas, 94 Eric Howard, 93 Terry Kennard, 92 Daryl Dess, and 91 Lawrence Tynes. But Barkley being above Nick, he's above Hakeem Nicks, isn't he? And Lawrence Tynes being as low as 91 were both sort of points of contentions from fans. So what do you reckon to that, Kev?
Yeah, I mean, with the Barkley thing, I do believe he should get on there. But for me personally, I would have put him at 100. I would have put him as far down the list as possible. You give him the recognition that he's on the 100, but he just squeezed in for me. Nicks is a Super Bowl winning wide receiver who, let's not forget, during that time, he was our number one guy, our true number one. And for a short period of time there, for those few years, he was that good. People seem to forget, obviously, sometimes it might be before people's fandom, but he was genuinely a number one wide receiver in this league for the Giants. And Tynes 91 is absolutely shocking. I mean, that's just zero kicker love right there.
Isn't it?
Just 2 Super Bowls, come on.
That was exactly going to be my point. Like, without Tynes, do we get to the Super Bowl? Because I'm pretty sure he kicked the winning field goal in both of the championship games. So how do you have somebody who has had that much of an influence on the Giants down at 91? I think you're right, Kev. I think it all comes down to the position he plays, not being sexy enough to be higher.
You say that, coming up in the next 20 positions, there is a punter. So, who would think it? Tynes, I should absolutely be higher. I agree with you on that. Running through the next 20 positions, then Aaron Thomas Titan at 90, Jason Sehorn, another one that was really quite low down at number 89, Howard Cross 88, Corey Webster 87, Eric Barnes defensive back at 86, David Meggett 85, Ahmad Bradshaw, another member of the 2012 Super Bowl winning team, down at 84. Kerry Collins at 83. Didn't realise he was that good a quarterback. Kareem McKenzie, offensive tackle at 82. Another Super Bowl winner. Frank Cope at 81. Guard William Roberts at 80. Jeff Hostetler at 79. Mark Haynes 78. John Mendenhall, shall I say, defensive tackle at 77. Gary Reasons at 76. Linebacker Pepper Johnson, great name, at 75. Jack Gregory at 74. Here we go. Here's the punter, Don Chandler at 73. But punters are people too, let's not forget. 72, Ron Johnson, and then rounding out the last 30 places, we've got linebacker and, again, Super Bowl winner, Antonio Pierce at 71. Any of these jump out as being quite low, Kev?
I mean, Howard Cross and Jason Sehorn, they feel a little low to me. I thought they were very good players. I mean, Corey Webster as well. But again, he was like a fantastic corner when I started supporting the Giants in 2007. So he sort of stands out to me as someone who I recognize. I mean, there's a lot of names on there that you kind of recognize but don't really know. We might not have seen play. I mean, it's been a long time since I watched the History of the Giants 4 DVD box set from like 2003 or whenever that box set was. So someone jump out there. I mean, Antonio Pierce feels a little bit low as well, but those are just some names.
Yeah, I think Ahmad Bradshaw at 84 seems quite low for somebody who had a big impact on the team, especially if you look at where he was drafted. And this is something we kind of spoke about last week, I think, in the Hard Knocks review, where we were talking about players who had been drafted low down, and that's where the future of the position is potentially for the Giants. But I've got to agree with what Kev was saying, and also it's what you said, Dan. You kind of highlighted it. Jason Sehorn at 89 just seems.
He's widely regarded as sort of one of the best Giants defensive backs of all time.
And he's white.
White defensive back, yes, true.
A white defensive back is about as rare as rocking or shit. So, so we have to treat him nice.
Yeah, exactly. So for him to be as low as 89, that really did surprise me. But yeah, I think that the one out of those that stands out for me, even going back to the first 10 as well, is Hakeem Nicks. I think he criminally underrated. And I definitely think he should be on a lot higher on that list. And yeah, you point on Ahmad Bradshaw as well. He scored the winning touchdown at Super Bowl 46, albeit unintentionally because he fell backwards onto his ass. But nonetheless, he scored the winning touchdown in Super Bowl 46. If he hadn't scored that touchdown, would we have got it into the end zone? Who knows? You never know what's going to happen on the next play. So, we owe a lot to him. So for him to be so low down at 84 is a bit of a surprise as well.
Yeah, there's a few comments here just from Keith, and obviously for those who don't know Keith is the champion of the UK Giants fans UK page on Facebook.
Evening, Governor.
He said the top 100 list seems a strange undertaking to me because there are so many players from the early years of the team we don't have a lot of footage on. And I think that's a fair point. It's really difficult to look back at 100 years of players and try and do a sell to the current crop of Giants fans when you don't know anything about those players. And it's very hard to kind of big them up in text form. It doesn't really work. But he also said, Antonio Pierce being so low, it just highlights how many great defenders we've had on this team, especially in the 50s and 80s. And
very true.
I mean, you understand why they've done it. It's because it's the 100th season. Not 100 years, but the 100th season that we're going into. So you can kind of understand why they've gone for the top 100. But I think what would have been really cool is doing team of the decades, each decade doing a team. Then you'd have your historians being able to pick out the players that in written form that people talked about and had some of the footage of. But then you'd have the noughties, teens, and 20s for us, and you'd be able to associate with those players a bit more.
Yeah, that would have been. I think that would have made sense doing it that way, having a team of the decade sort of thing, or sort of break it up into 10-year chunks anyway. Obviously, with it being 2024, I don't know if a decade would work, but break it up into 10-year chunks. I think. Yeah, but I do that.
Has anyone from 2020 been worthy enough to get in?
No. I'm not saying from 2020.
Stop there.
From you start at 2015 and go to 2024.
Oh, okay.
Do it in sort of 10. So obviously from 1925 to 1934, 1935 to 1940, and so on like that. But no, nobody from 2020 has been worthy enough to get in. I would be very surprised if he's not.
So just for audio listeners, there's a comment that says, are we all in agreement LT is going to be number one? The only person who could be above LT is Eli, surely.
I mean, it's going to be 1, 2. Hulty makes a great point there. Recency bias, maybe, but it was done by, there's a lot of a panel of people. So you kind of think that he would edge out Eli, I think.
Frank Gifford better be in the top 5. I think he will be as well, Keith. I'll be very surprised if he's not. For those that, historians, that know Frank Gifford and have seen him play and his era of the Giants. Obviously, he was a huge name for us. So, I'll be very surprised if he's not. But yeah, so we've got 70 more spaces up for grabs. They'll be released sort of over the sort of coming week or two. So they've released them quite quickly, haven't they? So I'd imagine they'll be released over the next few days.
I think I can't remember if they've been doing 2 a week. It does feel like the first one came out last week. So there might be another one later this week and then early next week before the pod. So we'll probably end up covering another 20 next week. But for those who haven't kind of watched any of them, I do highly recommend going on there because it's Paul Schwartz and Bob Papa, who are two members of the panel who chose the 100 players. And then they always have two players on there. So if you look at not the most recent one, but the one before that, you've got Jason Sehorn and you have got Corey Webster on there. And they both speak very highly of each other, but also a couple of other teammates that are around them on that list. So well worth a watch.
Yeah, I watched the first one. It was very good.
You mean Bob Papa, a friend of the pod, who regularly wears pod merchandise on his podcast?
That exact T-shirt you're wearing there, Kev, I think you'll find. Evening, Bob, if you're listening. I doubt he's not. You never know. Cool. All right. We're going to move on from the news. Spoiler alert, like I said at the beginning, if you don't want to know what happened on Hard Knocks episode 3, you may want to avoid this next section. There you go. That's your cue to. Last night, the highly anticipated episode 3 of Hard Knocks off season aired, and having watched this evening, literally a couple of hours ago, I thought I'd let Craig's probably a better bet to run through the main talking points. So over to you, mate, for those.
Yeah, for those who know, I watched it first thing this morning. It's a 36-minute episode. It took me 2 hours because I was taking notes. So thanks, Dan.
That's dedication.
Piss poor planning prevents piss poor something else. Performance. There we go.
Let's hope my performance is up to par here then. Right, so let's start with Saquon Barkley, seeing as he dominates episode 1, episode 2, and you heard it, episode 3.
Judas.
The start of the episode as well, the start of the episode for the second week running, and a chunk in the middle was obviously dedicated to this saga, which finally we have some closure until we start talking about in week 7. When the Eagles get to play the Giants. Woo! In the episode, we saw Joe Shane and Ed Berry have multiple conversations around what was happening and what it would take to keep Saquon at the Giants. The opening saw Joe ask Brandon Brown, would you guys be up for offering something? To which Brandon Brown's reply was 100%. Joe then spoke to Ed Berry on the phone to ask what the deal was, but unlike previous episodes, and this was one of my points of contention on this episode, I get why they had to do it this way, but in previous episodes we had both sides of the conversation, whereas now we're only getting Joe Shane's side, and it's very difficult to try and really get a good grasp on things when you can't hear the secondary part of the conversation. But that's just a minor gripe from myself. Now, Joe did write down on the board exactly what Ed Berry told him, and because he asked, what is it going to take? 12.5 mil average per year, 3 years, 25 mil guaranteed. Joe said, if I call you back with those numbers, we'll bring him down, fly you up and do a press conference. However, 2 minutes later, they show Mara walking into the office, and Joe Shane says, well, after that, Berry's response was, well, I'm not saying, we're going to do that. We've got a lot of work to do. Yeah. And I just thought, compared to last week when we heard Ed Berry and Joe Shane talking, it seems like the tone had changed very quickly on Berry's part, and just what he was saying there, it just didn't really add up to a good kind of outcome for the Giants and for Saquon at all in this. So, Joe then phoned him up and tried to get, are the numbers north? Is he going in division? Where's he going to go? There's rumors that, the Bears were driving the number up, so Philly was out, and John Mara saying, I'll have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philly. Just being honest, I think is exactly what all of us were thinking at that precise moment. Mm-hmm. Obviously, towards the end of the episode, we see the announcement of Barkley to the Eagles, and Rossetti saying to Mara that 3 years, $37.75 million up to $1 million, up to a max of 46.75 and 26 million guaranteed, which is obviously all inflated numbers other than the years on what was told to Joe Shane earlier as like being that number potentially. Rossetti also mentioned that 13 a year beats the franchise tag number, and that there's a potential that the APY on that is 15.8 if he gets the max. So we kind of have closure. It's taken up a lot of airtime of stuff that maybe could have been shown for other reasons. There was another player that left the Giants that barely got,
2 seconds.
A 1% of what Barkley got across 3 episodes, which we'll get into a bit later because I've got that in my random musings. But yeah, Dan, just kind of your thoughts on the Barkley saga. Now, we all said there was no offer, and there wasn't an offer. Let's be honest, there's no offer there. We didn't offer Saquon Barkley anything. But it almost feels like we were never going to be given the opportunity to do so anyway.
Exactly that. I mean, after that phone call, like you said, when he sort of goes, "Well, I'm not." It's almost like like you said, the what's his name, Ed Berry. Mm-hmm. Like you said, that tone of like, "Oh yeah, we'll sort it out, we'll get it," and then it turned to, "No, we're really not." Sort of, it almost just sounded like they just lost interest, and they were like, "Actually, no, we want to look elsewhere." Because they kind of knew he was going to get more money elsewhere. Obviously, with the player getting more money, the agent's going to get more money. So you can't you understand that, but it was good to sort of have a bit of closure and find out. But it was great, it's great to see these little sort of insight, these little bits of insight. 3 episodes worth of inside knowledge on this whole saga. And I mean, I stick to my guns. He's Judas. Like Steve said, did he really have any intention of staying? Because if he had the intention of staying, he would have come back. If the money would have been on the table from Philly, and he would have come back and gone, "You know what? Like I've said, I want to be a Giant for life, regardless of the money. What can you offer me? At least listen to what the team could say, and at least let them say, put their offer on the table, lay their chips out on the table, as all the graphics had in that episode, which, by the way, I thought were quality. Like the whole poker table sort of setup I thought was amazing. But let them put their chips on the table, and then make a decision. But the fact that their offer wasn't even able to be made, from what we saw, whether it happened or not behind the scenes or with music being played in the room, so we obviously couldn't use that footage. Was there an ability for an offer to be put on the table, or was it just almost a case of the door is shut already? We're not even going to entertain you putting your bid on the table for him. And so for me, the overriding sort of feeling and taste in my mouth is that of absolute bitterness and disappointment, because I don't even think we were given the chance. And for somebody that preached and said they want to be a Giant for life, I think it's disgusting. And not just that, but for somebody who had been a Giant since day one, knows the rivalry with the Eagles, knows how much hatred there is between the two franchises, for him to then go and sign with Philly, and not just sign with them, that be all smiles and happy, and with the family and in green and with the Eagles logo on the chest, and it just reeks of just disgrace, absolute disgrace. And for me, 26, Saquon Barkley, you'll forever be known as Judas. To me, anyway, personally, I think good riddance. Good riddance. We've got Motor at 26 now, and watch him outdo you this season. I hope you get. No, I say that's really harsh. I don't hope you get injured, but I hope you have a really bad season. Run over.
Here. Like the one thing I will say about it, Joe Sheehan said that Chicago were driving the price up a bit, and they had loads of money to spend. They had loads of money to spend in free agency. But I think he wanted to go to Eagles. I do think that. I think Joe Sheehan
wanted success.
An offer wasn't made because Joe Sheehan said if it was 12.5 per year and 25 guaranteed, would that get the deal done? Essentially, what he was asking. And if Berry had said yes, then I think we would have gone through with an offer and offered something a bit lower to say, look, all right, 12.5 is what you want with 25 guaranteed. How about 11 with 21 guaranteed, and you can cement your legacy here. But that's what they would have done, but they were never given that opportunity because I believe that, he had made his mind up. Bridges have been burned, like we discussed in the past podcasts, and he has made the decision that he was going to leave the Giants. I mean, there's no way Shane was going to go up to that number. Like, he just doesn't value the running back position like that, and that's the way he wants to build his team, and he is the GM. So, Barkley was never going to stay. He was always going, and we just have to move on now. And I'm just glad that that saga is over, and I hope we don't show anything else of it within the next 2 episodes, because the next 2 episodes, the final 2 episodes, are going to be absolute crackers.
Mate, exactly. And one thing I will add as well is I think that as much as John Mara said he would lose sleep if he went to Philly, I think, being the owner of the team, he could quite easily, get involved. But it's almost like he trusted in Joe Schoen to do the job, to make the right decision, to handle it. It's almost like, okay, over to you. I'm just going to stay out of it, and it is what it is, sort of thing. So I thought that was sort of quite telling of him.
It's interesting you say that, because there were some tweets going around from Bobby Skinner from Talking Giants just before the pod, where he was saying that though Mara didn't really get involved, there is maybe a little bit of emotional warfare in there, and what he's saying, to try and see if he can sway Joe in any way, which I completely understand as well. There was a few things where he was saying, look, he's the most popular guy here to the fans, trying to reiterate that as well. So, yeah, I don't.
Shane's awkward laugh. Did you see that?
Yeah. Steve said here, if we've learned anything from this series, that Mara doesn't make even remotely as much as people on socials like to tell us, and I think that's completely spot on. Mara hasn't been involved a lot.
He likes to know what's going on. He likes to be informed.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, it's his money.
Exactly.
When you're the owner of the team, you're kind of allowed to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would much rather have an historical owner like Mara than I would maybe have like a Tepper or somebody.
A David Tepper.
Just so, a billionaire who comes in and just sees it more as a business than actually sees it as a family business. And that's what the Giants are. They're a family business run by the Maras. I'm just going to quickly go off topic as well, just because we're kind of talking about Mara being in the episode. Anybody see Mike Kafka in this episode at all? We're talking free agents here. We saw Bowen a couple of times, but we did not see Mike Kafka in the
That's the thing. That's the thing that I kind of picked up on. So when they're talking about offensive line, obviously looking at all the O-line targets, where was he?
Well, let's face it. You saw when they were talking Brian Burns and defensive players, you saw Shane Bowen. When you're talking offense and offensive players,
thanks, Steve.
You've got Brian Dable there, who's going to run the offense and call the plays this year.
Yeah, it's all telling, isn't it? It's all telling. So, right, let's move on to offensive line. So the free agency focused side of things from the offensive line. I really, just as an off cut bit, I really loved watching the back and forth between the signings, and that was like my big takeaway, is that if you're a football purist who understands the game to a slightly higher level than just watching it go back and forth, I think these are the sort of episodes that really get you going, because they're giving you the glimpse behind the curtain. And it's not just the glimpse behind the curtain on what happens, but it's the glimpse behind the curtain on what spanners are thrown in the work and how quickly do you adapt and how quickly do you pivot somewhere else. And that was what was really telling for me. Dan, you said about the poker game. I thought that was absolutely class. Can we just say that Joe Schoen and Brian Dable found a little loophole about playing music? So what did HBO go and do? They went and paid for the rights on the music so they could use something. So and probably influenced the entire poker game situation. So,
loved it.
It was quality.
Shout out to HBO for turning a negative into a positive.
Just also, Craig, just to jump on your piggyback on your point there, like, also, it was a great to see that it really is a team effort, a collaborative effort. It's not just Joe Schoen going on the phone to every single player's agent or making decisions, on his own and telling his staff what to go and do. It was very much sitting people in the room, getting their opinions, getting all the information, and allowing his staff to go and sort of like progress these deals. And I just thought it was
make the calls to the agents, and go off and come back with, we've offered this, they want this, and it was I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, so when we actually kind of look at the process here, it started off Joe and Dave's obviously discussing what's the priority here, and they both agreed the offensive line was a priority, which is nice to see because we all saw how bad it was last year, and it just shows that though they can adapt, they can also react as well, and they were very reactive in like, right, this is the one bit that we need to fix. And they went through three options: John Runyon, Robert Hunt, which I thought was very interesting, and then Jermaine Illuminor, with obviously two of those players signing for us. And I thought it was quite nice that they showed the potential value of what they thought each player was worth. Now, obviously, that changed as things moved forward. But later, we then saw Kevin Abrams, who was kind of, him and Ed Trigg were very predominant in this episode. It was really nice to kind of get an overview of what they bring to the table. But Kevin Abrams walked into Joe's office saying that the Jets had offered Runyon $9 million a year for 2 years, 2 years and 17 guaranteed. And that they had a pool because they had Hackett as offensive coordinator, I think he is over there, and Aaron Rodgers, obviously the quarterback over there, both people who have worked at the Packers, which is where Runyon had obviously come from, and that we would have to beat the deal in order to sign him, basically. So it was quite quickly there that Joe didn't want to go to 10 across sort of 3 years, but he said, right, okay, 10, 3 years.
Forced, isn't it?
Yeah. But he didn't change the guaranteed amount of money. So that's the interesting thing, just perfect. Yeah, great negotiations and saying, right, I want to keep that guaranteed money. And that's the big cap.
Yeah, because
later on down the road, isn't it?
Year three, there's no guaranteed money, is there?
So it's like a team option. It's brilliant.
Yeah. But it then priced us out of the Robert Hunt deal, which we then obviously see Abrams come in later when Joe Shane was talking to, I've forgotten his name, but the director of medical personnel, when he was talking about how the medical personnel does a report on every single player as well. And I would have loved to have seen the reports, but obviously that kind of got poo-pooed by Abrams walking in. But I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on the fact that Robert Hunt was an option. Kev?
Yeah, I mean, a great player, and we did talk about him, but we kind of said as well that we might be priced out. He might be one of the top guards going, and they had the rough price on him at between 13 and 15 mil per year. He ended up going for 20 mil per year. That Broncos guard today got 20 mil per year as well. I mean, you kind of look at these guards. I'm not saying John Runyon is the top of that list, but he is a very, very good, consistent guard in this league. And to get him for 10 mil per year for 3 years at the same guaranteed money as Jets were offering for 2, with a third year being a team option, I mean, you just have to think it's brilliant. And to see that he was on the short list as well, obviously things can be edited a certain way, but he was what they're after. Three offensive linemen was kind of the players they wanted, and they ended up coming away with 2 of the 3, which I think is fantastic business.
Dan?
Yeah, I think obviously with the 3 names that are on the table, I think if they were going to be getting a Hunt from Miami, then obviously that would the amount of money that he was commanding, obviously that would have had an impact on other free agent signings. That could have had an impact on the Brian Burns trade. That could have had an impact on lots of things. So it's quite cool how all the pieces fell into place, and it sort of allowed us to then go, actually, we can still afford to go out and get Brian Burns and make that trade. Quinn Miners is the guy from Broncos. That's right. Broncos. $24 million guaranteed in year 1.
Wow,
isn't he called the tummy or the belly or something?
The belly.
the belly, yeah.
He was one where he was drafted at the Senior Bowl, and he'd basically have his top up to his breasts and the belly hanging out.
80 mil over 4 years.
But just quickly as well, when they were talking about the offensive line and Runyon especially, they were saying that that they've got AT, JMS,
Runyon,
and they got Runyon now as a real sort of core of an offensive line going forward. It's kind of interesting they didn't really say Neil. And then I know we'll talk about Luminor in a minute, but they did say when they're talking about Luminor, they basically said he's a starting right tackle, starting left guard for us. So it's just, I just thought that was a little bit interesting.
Yeah, so it's pretty much Luminor was next on the list, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off what you've just said there, Kev, because Brandon, when they were saying, Illuminor we wanted to offer 6 mil, and he wants 7 basically, and Joe was like, okay, we're giving 7 across 3, and Ed Triggs, director of football operations, was like, no, he only wants a 2-year deal, like he doesn't want 3. So Joe's going back and forth, and Ed Triggs was like, well, he's going to go to Arizona if we don't match this. I just thought it was really, really good that Joe kind of didn't go, no, I'm doing 6, F you. He asked the room their opinion. And obviously Brandon Brown said, look, you said we wanted to get 2. And then Rossetti butted in by saying exactly what you said. He's either going to be that starting right tackle or he's going to be the starting left guard. And, then Triggs is like, look, it's 7 to get it done. Year 1's higher than the average, but there's no guarantees in year 2. And I think that was when he said that, Joe went, oh, okay, 7 mil makes sense now because he's going to get paid more with year 1, but year 2, no guarantees, means that if he's not what we hope he is, and my God, the man has the confidence, and if he can back it up, he's going to be absolutely phenomenal. But if he doesn't,
Jermaine Luminor.
yeah, I bet he's
comments the other night.
Yeah, not happy about the Euro result either. But
no.
But yeah, like no guarantee next year, which I think was probably the swaying point for Joe. During the random musings, I'll go through some of the other bits, but I guess we'll move on to Brian Burns, the payoff of 3 episodes worth of back and forth and little teases, and then they even had the audacity to show the flashbacks from episode 1 and episode 2 about talking about Brian Burns. It's like, come on, guys,
we need to see it.
Yeah.
Come on,
we know what's coming. We know what's coming. Stop padding. But obviously, there was a little bit before that. Bowen was shown walking into the room, and there was Joe, Dabes, Brandon Brown, and McDonnell in there. And Brown kind of mentioned that getting Burns is going to get the best out of Dex and out of Kayvon and will alleviate stress on the secondary, which I think was a very, very good point and a very interesting quote to leave in there about that, because as we know, secondary is potentially our weakest point at the moment on the defense. And I thought it was quite telling that, oh, there he is, he's back. And I thought it was quite telling as well that Joe Shane turned around to Bowen was kind of like, if you want Burns, I'll get you Burns, but that's all you're getting. It's kind of like, it's like at Christmas. It's like, if you want a laptop, I'll get you a laptop, but you're not having any other presents.
You're not getting a PS5.
It was like
well,
that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very much like that. Like, look, if you want him, we'll do it, but that is all you're getting, my friend.
And he wanted him, didn't he?
Oh, he wanted him. And I just thought it was interesting that Daves was like, how, what's his production like? So what's his sack production like? And McDonnell, off the top of his head, was like 46 sacks. By the way, Josh Allen, who's Josh Hines Allen?
Hines Allen, yeah.
Josh Hines Allen now. Rashawn Gary, Montez Sweat, all in the first round of the same draft class in 2019. All had less sacks than Brian Burns has in his 4 years in the league. 4 years in the league.
Yeah.
That's a stat that basically goes sold, doesn't it? It's just
we've got the premier edge rusher from that 2019 draft class.
Yeah, exactly.
And we even said it last week. Although his sacks are a little bit underwhelming, he definitely passes the eye test. He's a freak.
Yeah. I mean, his spin move is absolutely disgusting. So, we've waxed lyrical about that on this podcast many, many a time. So, so obviously then the deal was done, 28.5 mil per year, 5 years, 87.5 mil guaranteed, which is pretty much bang on the numbers that Joe Shane mentioned in episode 1 when he first started talking. So he knows his stuff. Mr. Yeah, he does know his stuff, Mr. Shane. How funny was it when Joe had that one-to-one interview, that little sort of VT sort of moment where he went, patience is not a strength of mine. And then a few seconds later, his Whoop band gives him the notification on his phone. It's like, oh, I've been in the high stress zone for 6 hours and 24 minutes. Like,
oh dear.
I think I really like the addition of that because it kind of shows the mental strain that it puts on there. And
it must be horrendous.
But it's not just stuff like that. You remember when I can't remember, they were talking about someone a bit later, and they were looking at their board, and it's like we're in the office till 5 a.m. We're watching tape, we're talking, and it means nothing. We've got a board up here that basically just goes to shit, essentially. Yeah. As soon as one player
goes. It's when they were looking at free agent prospects, wasn't it? They said about being in the office till 5 a.m.
watching through all the scenarios.
It's like, I mean, you might as well have a fold-away bed in the office.
Yeah, they work their arse off, don't they?
So,
and I think this, and I think I just want to add on that. You're saying they work their arse off. I think that's become apparent in these 3 episodes that you don't realise the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes, and I think this is a great sort of eye opener to see like how much work actually does go into it, and you kind of appreciate now that that's a bloody hard job.
So just to sort of close off the Burns thing, I just want to get your guys' thoughts on the phone call between Morgan and Joe Shane, where Joe's arguing with Dan Morgan about the addition of the 7, and let's just settle on the previous offer, which was 39, 149, and the highest 5th rounder next year for Burns and pick 165. And obviously Joe was getting a bit pissed off, I think, with his best friend there. Saying that he tried to wear me down with a 7th rounder and half a sack sort of thing. So there was a big conversation where he said, look, we're going to be allies for the next few years and we really need to play this. Dan, what were your thoughts on seeing the dynamic between 2 GMs that kind of have that friendship between them, and the fact that they're able maybe to push each other in ways you wouldn't push somebody you didn't like?
I thought it was quite cool. I think obviously what the Panthers GM was wanting, obviously that 7th rounder as well. He thought like I'm going to ask the question and see what I can get. And obviously Shane's pushed back and gone no. But just to have that sort of like dynamic that between the two of them, it kind of makes you realize that maybe like sort of the GMs are quite a close-knit community, or some of them are anyway. And it was the comment that obviously like when they went at the Senior Bowl, and obviously they're talking on the sideline at the Senior Bowl, and obviously that he sowed the seed, and it's sort of like how it's sort of that from then on you sort of realise that they're actually quite good friends, and it's like I didn't really expect that GMs would be that close friends, like especially of opposing teams. So I thought that was quite cool that actually they have got sort of allies and friends in the league, and that if one of them isn't sure or needs advice on something, then they can sort of turn to each other for advice, rather than it being such a dog-eat-dog world as we sort of think it is. Actually, it's good to have those friends in high places that can then potentially be there to help you out. So yeah, I thought it was quite cool.
Kev?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously they came up through the ranks together, didn't they? They started off like personnel, their personnel type jobs in Carolina and stuff, And the thing is, it's quite tricky because you don't only get one over on your mate. There's like do your mate over, but you're coming to a common goal of he wants what's best for his team, and Joe Shane wants what's best for his team. I mean, I would have liked to have seen the middle negotiations. How they kind of got to 39 and 149. You mean that type of thing? We're not going to get to see everything. I understand that, but it was like I've been like, even when I've been playing Madden and Madden leagues, you always try to do a trade and try and just get a little something at the end of it, But it was nice to see Joe Shane just go, "Come on, Dan, look, let's just we've got this ironed out. Let's just go forward with it." And he's probably gone, "Yeah, okay, grand. Let's go ahead." So it's nice to see that interaction. And I think was it around the NFL lads said a couple of years ago, like they should have like a GM WhatsApp group where they're all just where they're all just in it, like firing out trades left, right, and center. He's up for it, but like so they obviously don't have that. But like stuff like the Senior Bowl, the combine and stuff like that. These are where these things are just thrown out. You might go up to someone and go, "Is so and so available?" You might get a dead no. You might go, Possibly, these kind of. It's nice to see these little sort of interactions.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say as well, like just to go for a wee tangent, is it's kind of interesting to see that it's not as fancy as you think all these things are. It is quite straightforward. It's kind of like blokes, people working for teams having discussions. Even with Joe Sheehan talking to his staff, it is very much like what's blah blah. It's just very much, but it's so nice to see behind the scenes and see behind the curtains and how it's all done.
Yeah, because like you'd think it'd be like really like meticulous and every sort of like penny of it like planned. It's like, yeah, we'll offer him that. We'll give him 7 million.
How funny is it? Like as well as like the average per year is it seems like a big thing. Like that was always talked about. Whereas I always thought no one really cares about having average per year. But apparently, yeah, that's the way they talk about it. They want this many years, average per year, and guaranteed money. Those are the three big things that players want to know. What does the deal look like to begin with?
And also with the relationship between the two of them, I think it makes you wonder what if it was another GM, say for instance it was the Panthers' old GM, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, would he, and he sort of said, I want a 7th round as well. It would almost make you wonder, would Shane go sort of jokingly and be like, no, get off my back sort of thing, or would he be like, okay, yeah, we'll give you the 7th as well to get the deal done sort of thing. So almost maybe that sort of friendship helps to sort of push that deal through.
Yeah, absolutely, and I didn't mention it on here, but there was the kind of Joe Shane at home scene where his daughter was kind of saying how she's best friends with Dan Morgan's daughter and that they talk quite a lot, and it's quite funny. They are that close, and you probably don't have that anywhere else. I think that is an anomaly within the league, I would imagine. So
they're actually on holiday together right now, I think. The two families.
Yeah, shocker. Right, random musings then. So just a few other sort of quick-fire bits, chronological order that I saw and just thought were worth maybe having a very quick discussion between the three of us. Tyrod Taylor was seen as the Giants' first choice backup quarterback. Joe did mention Minshew, Locke, and Darnold as options. And then obviously when we got onto day 2, it was shown that Tyrod went to the Jets for $12 million, where the estimate was $7 million.
It was Joe explained 2 years, $12 million, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Joe explained tomorrow that injuries and price point were just a big no from him. And then obviously a little bit later after that, we pivot onto Locke, who was mentioned in the original conversations. These are conversations that happened before free agency that we didn't know what was going to happen. So it's nice to see that he was actually on the board for the Giants prior to that. But I know he offers familiarity and they were both very high, but would either of you been excited to see Tyrod back for year 3? Dan?
Not really. I think, don't get me wrong, I think he's a good quarterback, but injuries have always been an issue with Taylor. And we've seen that firsthand, especially last year. So I think if he was to come back for, if we decided to go up to sort of the money he got from the Jets, I would have been a bit disappointed. I just want to add as well that I thought when they mentioned about Joe Flacco being out there as well, it's almost like they were looking at so many different options. And I think they mentioned Flacco, obviously Drew Lock,
Darnold.
There was a Sam Darnold. Yeah, there's another one. It was almost like I think we got the best of that bunch in Drew Lock.
Agree. He was one that we mentioned on our free agency podcast as well. We were talking about potential fits, and he said he was around 4 million and got for 5. I definitely think have been on the hook for Tyrod for 2 more years. I think was a bit much. I think that sort of 5 million mark for a good backup, 1-year deals, I think is kind of the way forward. Unless you've got like a decent rookie on a rookie contract.
And I like the way they sold it as well. Sorry, Craig.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Like they mentioned, right, Trubisky came to us at Buffalo. He got more money. Tyrod's now got more money from us. So that's, like you were going to say, Dan, they sold it to Locke in a very, very intellectual way. And I didn't hear any rumblings. Now, they might not have said anything, and they might have omitted this from the episode, but I didn't hear any rumblings about you will be the starter, you will be given opportunities. It was very cut and dry of like, you're the backup.
Yeah. And it's obviously, I think that was just about, but they mentioned that, if Daniel's not good to go, but it's very much a case of you are the backup. There's no other expectation.
Yep. And then running back, obviously, Motor Singletary is the direction we went in, but DeAndre Swift, as Kev said earlier, was another person who was mentioned. The DeAndre Swift, he got paid by was it the Bears he went to, DeAndre Swift? I can't remember.
So. And I think he went for a good bit more, like 6, 7, 8 million per year.
Yeah. We were saying earlier about the Bears having that kitty to play with, and though they didn't get Barkley, they still, I think, paid a fair chunk for Swift. It was always going to be a preference for Motor with the ties to Buffalo. It was just written in the stars. Did anyone else find Joe's comment just a little cringy, though, of motorboat?
Yeah.
Motors in the boat.
That didn't work.
No, it didn't, did it? It was just a bit like... The rest of the room was completely silent. You were like, yeah, that didn't hit, did it?
No, it didn't hit. There you go. So DeAndre Swift's contract, 3 years, 24 million. 14 of that guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, what do we get Motor for? 3 years, 15.
Yeah, so it's no brainer.
And for a lot of the money as well, they were very close of their valuations for the players they got and stuff like, and they stayed around their valuations, like players that even they valued at X amount, and they got paid way more. They weren't in that conversation, so that's really pleasing to see that they had like kind of evaluations there, and the players they got met their evaluations.
Yep. We kind of touched on it earlier. McKinney got just minimal time across the 3 episodes, and yeah, exactly. It did kind of feel like that. I mean, it was a fact. It was a case of they said, oh, there was another Giant who went somewhere else, and it was like, right, here's Rappaport on the NFL Network giving you the terms of the deal. Joe Shane's on the phone. Wow, he got 17 million a year. That puts him as second highest in the league. Bang, on to the next topic. It was just kind of. Yeah, I don't know. McKinney gave us a lot, and he was an Iron Man last season. It just felt like, yes, he's gone, but maybe just a little more of a nod to him would have been nice.
Done him dirty a little bit, I think.
Yeah,
by not showing more into it, because they're guaranteed there would have been more to it. But I think the whole Barkley situation was just.
There must have been conversations, like there must have been like some sort of like, where are you price wise? There must have been something.
Well,
they were never going to go to 17, mind you.
No, but they said to Jerome Henderson at the Combine last week that they were going to circle back with his agent. We haven't seen any conversations with the agent there. Whether that's something the Giants have purposefully not, said, yeah, can we not? Or whether it just wasn't recorded or something like that, then I don't know. But yeah, it did seem just a bit strange that there wasn't a lot on McKinney.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading Dan Duggan's thoughts about the episode not long before we come on air, and I think we got to hear about McKinney. He said he was disappointed by the lack of insight into the McKinney sort of contract. Even though he doesn't have Saquon's star power, his contract is worth $30 million more. So it would have been good to get some sort of sense into what, if anything, the Giants did actually offer him. So we didn't see it. You never know. We might find out in the next couple of weeks a little bit more about it. We might sort of find out more during the next few months. I don't know, but it was very, very minimal, and it was a little bit disappointing.
So before I do my usual and finish on the lighter note, teaser for next week was probably the best teaser we've had out of the 3 episodes. And did we get a little hint at the fact that we did try and move up, but not for Drake May like everyone thought it was? It was clearly Jaden Daniels that apparently we decided to try and move up for, Kev.
It looks like if Jaden Daniels got to 3, if Drake May went 2 to the Commanders and Daniels got to 3, Patriots might have come out of that and we might have gone up.
Because obviously last week there was the whole visit to the Patriots camp at the Combine as well, wasn't there? So yeah, but it seems like they were. It seems like they were going to move hard to try and get him if he was still there at 3.
How quick was the How when Joe Sheehan, would you move up to 3 for Daniels? How quick was they able to go? Yes.
Yeah.
But
Instant,
we said
wasn't
that
it?
last week. We said that last week, didn't we, Kev? Me, you, and Shane were all in agreement of like, okay, Daniels is Dave's guy, whereas Joe Shane fell in love with Drake May. Like we all said that, so you knew immediately that he was going to be like, yes. So yeah, going to be very interesting. But let's end on the lighter note. Towards the end of the episode, there was a montage of Locke, Singletary, Runyon, Illumina, and Burns all arriving, signing their contracts, family, pictures, doing the little vlog style, hey, I'm here. The best part, and I can't tell it,
love this.
I can't
Love
tell
this.
if it was Ed Triggs, but I've had a look at the Giants staff, and there's only a few bald people on the Giants staff pictures, unless they're old, and Ed Triggs is one of them. So it might have been him. But when Drew Lock turns around and says, is there a slogan? He goes, yeah, you could say go Big Blue or fuck the Eagles or, whatever, because the Giants fans were like that. I just loved that little peek into Ed Triggs where he was just like, you know what? I know what the fans want, and they want the second.
Imagine if Drew Lock had done that little vlog and he went, fuck the Eagles.
They wouldn't have said
Hero.
that out for obvious reasons.
Immediate hero.
They would have said that out for obvious reasons. But if that was Ed Triggs, he's a hero. He's the people's hero, he is. Because he was saying exactly what every Giants fan's thinking. And it's just it's nice to see that, in the staff in there as well, like, Joe Sheehan's lieutenants, they hate the Eagles just as much as we do.
Yeah. Do you reckon Dion was having absolute kittens watching that back? The old football communications man, just like, oh, please don't.
Yeah, imagine.
I thought, actually, speaking of Dion, I did think it was quite interesting that he was also involved in a lot of in the office during the sort of negotiations. I don't know who it was, but someone called him out for the fist bump. I think it might have been one of either. No, I don't think it was Rossetti. It was one of the guys who was just like, Dion, what are you here? That's a bit harsh.
That is a bit harsh, yeah. But like one thing I will say as well before we finish up on Hard Knocks is like, I actually really, I thought this anyway, but I think Joe Sheehan is a fantastic GM, right? He seems to be, a lot of things he's doing just make sense. And, you can kind of see the rationale behind it. I think he's a little bit wet behind the ears still. I think he's a little bit awkward in certain situations. I think he's just experience. He just needs to gain experience. But I do think that he has the makings of being a really, really good GM in this league.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm fully looking forward to next week. Put it that way. And it'd be interesting when this whole sort of 5 weeks of Hard Knocks ends, just to watch them all back, but just like binge watch them and just sort of just reminisce and enjoy the 3 hours of Hard Knocks there'll be or whatever.
So we'll probably end up doing
and repeat again.
We'll probably do a series review. So obviously we'll carry on doing these for episode 4 and episode 5. The week after episode 5, we'll do a series review. So for you boys and for the listeners, favorite moment. So make sure you remember your favorite moment across all 5 episodes, and we want to know them. And then what wasn't shown that you really wish was on there. I already have mine, and I don't think it's going to be shown because we're way past it now. So,
once the episode 5's shown on HBO Max, Sky will probably get it, or the Zone will probably get it. So you might get all 5 episodes dropping at once, like.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there we go. That's just something for 3 weeks' time. There, we'll do a favourite moment.
It's just disappointing it's going to come to an end very soon.
Yeah, we might even have to do a top 3.
Yeah, sounds good.
Top 3. There you go.
Yeah. All right. Hard Knocks in the bag. There we go. Looking forward to next week. So stay tuned and watch next week for the episode 4 review, because that's going to be coming hot off the press too. Right, state of play time. This week under the spotlight, we have our linebackers. So carrying on with the defense, we've got our linebackers. Let's rattle through them. Craig, linebacker 1 is up first. None other than Bobby O, right?
Bobby Okereke, probably the Giants' best free agent signing in a very, very long time. We all said it at the beginning of last year when we were really excited to see him. Like, look, this could be the difference maker. boy, did he show it. In what was his first season after 4 years with the Colts, he played every single snap on defense across the whole season and was quickly lauded as the linebacker the Giants have been missing for years. Career highs, obviously, in snaps, 1,128. But that's just one of multiple career highs for Bobby O in this last season. 20 pressures is a new high, 3 sacks, 56 run stops, 4 forced fumbles, all individual career highs. Tied his career high interception number with 2. Recorded his lowest missed tackle rate was 7.7. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Highs in tackling grade and coverage grade. It pretty much explains exactly why we love him so much and why, despite all of this, for some reason he's still underrated and wasn't even in the top 10 for a recent linebackers in the NFL conversation. I mean, I don't know who. We're just hated. It's the only explanation that no one likes the Giants, because we're a losing franchise at the moment, and it's quite easy to shit on us. But I'm sorry, when you have a player recording those kind of numbers, career highs across the board in year 5, come on. If you look at stats, 105 solo tackles was tied 12th, 38 assisted tackles was 16th, missed tackle rate of 7.7. Weirdly, is tied 53rd, but you've probably got some guys on there who had 1 snap. 20 pressures is tied 12th. Coverage grade 82.5 was tied 12th. Passer rating allowed 89.1 when targeted, and run defense grade of 74.4. So the expectations that we have for this year, I mean, they're going to be high. And despite Okereke having a new defensive coordinator in Shane Bowen, we really shouldn't see a drop-off as long as the linebacker next to him is serviceable. We may not see another Superman all-snap season from Bobby. However, he will continue to shine. So, Kev, despite being on a team with Dex and Thibodeau, who both draw plaudits due to their performances last season, is it fair to say that maybe Bobby is still an underrated key component of this defense despite his numbers?
Yeah, he's completely underrated. I mean, like we did talk about him in free agency last year as a player we'd like to sign. Went and signed him. We thought he was a good linebacker out of Indy, but this year he's shown he's an excellent linebacker. I think the linebacker position as well just doesn't get the love across the league anyway. In general, I think you either like need to get after the quarterback or pick the quarterback to sort of get some love. But he just came in and was a leader. He's definitely like that right kind of guy type player as well. Like he's got a fantastic character, and he just tackles, and he's excellent in coverage, very good in coverage. So I mean, like he came in and was like the linebacker that we've been crying out for years, and a great leader in the team. And he should get more plaudits. And it's frustrating that he hasn't, but we know what we've got, so we just need to start winning. And I think people will take him more seriously and look at him a bit more, as well as all the Giants, to be honest.
Dan, thoughts on Bobby O?
I mean, I think he is absolutely underrated. I think for someone in his first year with the team, to go on and play every single snap and be in the top 15 in almost all of those stats, obviously missed tackle rate, he was at 7.7%, which is unbelievably low for a linebacker. And his coverage grades as well were pretty good too. He's not got the praise he deserves. But I agree with you, Kev. I think unless you're in the top 5 linebackers in the league, they don't tend to get anywhere near as much praise as they should, because they're the heart and soul of this defense. They're the engine in that room. They're the ones calling the plays on the defense, and it's criminal that some of these guys are so underrated. I mean, he's ranked 10th by PFF ahead of the 2024 season, which. When you look at the names above him, I'm like, okay, fine. But Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, JOK, from the Cleveland Browns, is above him. Would you put him above Bobby O last season? Probably not, no. And there's some names on there as well. I think, would they be above him? No. So I think that he definitely doesn't get the accolades and the praise that his season last year rightly deserved. So, yeah, I think underrated is definitely a good word.
Indeed. Right, Dan, over to you for the next one, mate.
Yeah, mate. Micah McFadden. last year saw McFadden win the starting job next to Bobby O in training camp, which I think we were all a little bit surprised by. But despite it only being his sophomore season as well, he wasn't flashy, but he was very productive. There were multiple issues seen on the rest of the team in the first couple of weeks, but he actually recorded a season high 11 total tackles in week 1 against the Cowboys, and a season high 9 solo tackles in the following game against San Francisco in week 2. And although he was relatively inexperienced prior to the season, he started 14 of the 16 games he appeared in and recorded 737 defensive snaps. And for someone in his second year in the league and not being a high draft pick, I thought it was an outstanding season. He totaled over 100 tackles and four fumble recoveries and an interception. 71 total tackles, ranked 49th in the league. 25 assisted tackles, ranking 44th. His missed tackle rate was a bit concerning with 20.7, but pressures 14 tied him for 27th. His run defense grade 68.1. The coverage grade of 57. So is in run defense and in pass coverage could be better. But let's not forget he was only in his second year, and his passer rating allowed was 103. So not a great number there, but overall, I thought he seemed to be very. His play was fairly consistent, and there were times during the season where we were struggling on defense, and out of the blue, Micah McFadden would make a hell of a play, and you'd be like, "Wow, Micah McFadden!" I don't think anybody expected that second season from him that he had, but. Moving forward into 24, I think the expectations, he'll still be expected to contribute on defense. But obviously, in Hard Knocks, we've seen that Shane Bowen has hinted that he might see a reduction in time on the field, which we'll get to in the next player. But that doesn't mean it's set in stone. And if he was to prove Bowen's preconceptions wrong, I doubt the new DC would think twice about starting him next to Okereke once again. But Kev, he'll likely be asked to do more in coverage under Bowen. Whilst he isn't awful, he did grade quite low, like I said. Do you think he'll have to settle for more of a rotational role?
Yeah, a little bit, actually. I think, he's in my opinion, at the moment, he's still growing, he's still young, but he's a fantastic early down run stuffing linebacker. He's a great tackler, and he's a very, very good blitzing linebacker. He looks like he's been shot out of a cannon sometimes. His coverage grade does leave a little bit to be desired. But I think, on those early downs, obvious running plays, I think he'll really carve out a really good role there. But I do think, if we're able to get after the quarterback, run stuff, and teams get sort of third and long or second and long, you might see the next guy we're going to talk about get on the field a lot more. But like I said, he's a great player to have. He's still young. He still can develop his game. But I think he's a very, very good sort of early down linebacker.
Yeah, for sure. Craig, do you think being in that sort of more rotational role could help his development?
Yeah, it's never going to hurt, is it? And let's be honest, I don't see it being a complete drop off. I don't see him being completely ousted by the next player on the list. He will still see the field, and considering the jump that we saw from him from year 1 to year 2, which obviously we didn't expect in the slightest. I think, Kev, there's a player that we're going to mention a bit later in Darrian Beavers, but I think after the draft, we all saw Beavers being more impactful than maybe McFadden was going to be. And yet, the tide has turned a little bit really there. I think McFadden will still be used heavily, and that will help. But obviously, then having the ability to step back and maybe have another year learning under Okereke, because they clearly have a good partnership and a good friendship as well. You saw that last year. They were almost inseparable. There's that great picture of them both on the sidelines, both looking like absolute G's.
Yeah, mate. Love it.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't see it being something that's going to be detrimental to his development. And as you said, at the end of the day, if he impresses in preseason more than what Bowen thinks he might in his scheme, who's to say that he doesn't end up just being the starter again?
Exactly that. Exactly. Now, I think he's definitely got a lot to give, and I think having the next player we're going to talk about.
Who is this next player?
I know. I mean, his name's on the screen. for those that are watching. They know who's coming. But to have that rotation, I definitely think it could aid his development. And I think it's not a bad thing settling for a more rotational role, because it means you've got healthy linebackers in your squad. It means you're not having to solely rely on two players. You can rely on those that are further down the depth chart to come in and do that job just as well.
Exactly. Right. Who is this mystery player?
Who's next? Come on. Drum roll,
Who
please.
is this mystery player? Right. So Isaiah Simmons. So the former first rounder was acquired by the Giants early last off-season in exchange for a 7th rounder. It did take him a little bit of time, really, to earn his snaps. I think it's fair to say he was used very sparsely to begin with. But, once he started to see the field, you could kind of see the glimpses of talent and what Wink wanted him to do. And as he got more familiar with his teammates and familiar with the scheme, I think it really unlocked what Simmons potentially can do. But he still didn't get that many snaps even afterwards, to be honest. I mean, since being drafted, he hasn't missed a single game. And he kept that streak up with the Giants as well. But he only played 33% of those defensive snaps across the entirety of the season. He did, however, still record 50 total tackles and contributed massively on special teams, where he played pretty much 50%, just under 50% of the snaps. So there was a lot to like with Isaiah Simmons. Maybe he wasn't used in the best way, but that could change this year. I mean, it's 23 stats. If you have a look, they're pretty much like middle of the pack with a lot of them, or lower down. Solo tackles 30, which is tied 80th. Assisted tackles 16th, tied 67th. Missed tackle rate was 16.4, which is quite high. But when you're not seeing the field as much, you're probably not quite getting into that kind of like rhythm, which can just affect you in a negative way, because you're just not really being able to get a consistency going. But the two ones that really stand out for me, passer rating allowed 77.2, which is 17th. Coverage grade of 82.7, which is tied 10th amongst all linebackers, is something outstanding. Now, I know that Simmons was kind of used a bit more of like maybe one of the first defensive gadget players, and was kind of lined up all over the place, but that's really impressive. Now, as Dan mentioned in the previous one with Micah McFadden, he was name dropped by Shane Bowen in the first episode of Hard Knocks as being a nickel on 1st and 2nd down with a money roll on 3rd. Now, could that potentially be what we're alluding to with McFadden's snap count, in the fact that he's saying nickel on 1st and 2nd down, with maybe McFadden coming in on 3rd down as Simmons goes for that more money roll? Potentially. Simmons' athleticism saw him get taken in the 1st round of the draft. We've now got to unlock that in exchange for a 7th rounder, which is ludicrous, really, that we were able to pick him up for that. If we can do that, we might have something special here. Kev, Wink used Simmons heavily in the blitz, but his coverage grade and passer rating kind of showed that he's very, very effective in that range. Could this be why he was name dropped, knowing that Shane Bowen has a tendency to use his linebackers more in coverage than maybe Wink would?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Simmons is the type of player that Bowen would like salivate over. Like he'd really love getting to use him. Like we were saying, like he's that type of player. Like, so you could have Bobby and McFadden on for the early downs, the first downs, and like if you run stuff and you're on 2nd and 9, 3rd and 9, or get a sack and you're on 2nd and 13. 3rd and 13. He'd be the type of player that would be on the outside as a nickel on the early downs with McFadden on the field. McFadden comes off. He'd move into the money position, like that extra linebacker safety hybrid. You'd bring on someone like your nickel back then, like your Drew Phillips, to cover the nickel position, and he'd be your rangy linebacker to cover running backs out of the backfield, big athletic tight ends, because he's a big lad as well. He's like 6'3" himself, so he's got that length as well. So, and he's fast, he's lightning. You've seen his 40 time was like phenomenal for the linebacker position. So I think definitely we'll see him a bit more in coverage. Like if the front 7 with McFadden, Bobby O, and that front line of Burns, Thibodeau, Sexy Dexy, and whoever's next to him, if they can really stuff the run and get after the passer, and you're behind the sticks, I think someone like Simmons give you so much range and so much coverage ability for obvious passing downs. I think we could really see him excel this year.
Dan?
Yeah, massively. And I think the fact that he hasn't missed a game since being drafted as well says that he's durable. So, he's absolutely dependable. Obviously, being one of those three prongs, smart, tough, dependable. The fact that he's not missed a game as well, he's pretty tough because he's obviously avoiding being injured. Granted, he's not playing, obviously, every snap. But when he is on the field, he's being sensible. He's not necessarily going all out and making these high risk sort of plays to get himself injured. And the fact that he's a former first round pick as well, let's not forget that. It showed that there's got that huge amount of talent that just needs to be unlocked. And obviously, we signed him to a 1 year contract not long ago. Paying him $2 million this year as a sort of go out there and prove yourself. And having Shane Bowen as DC, I think he could shine. He could absolutely shine in this defense this year. And that's why I think his name was dropped so early on in Hard Knocks, is because he could potentially be, one of the outstanding defensive players this year, especially, outside of the big names. I don't think anybody expects much from him. So even that could work in his favor, and he could have an absolute, stellar season.
And it wouldn't surprise me if Shane Bowen didn't actually make contact with Simmons during the free agency period to explain to him how he would actually use him in this defense. And I just think, he went out there and says it is a prove it deal. But like I was saying before, I just think his athleticism, Shane Bowen having a plan for him. And don't forget as well, it's a brand new defense for everyone, but he gets a full preseason and off season of this defense. He came in like very, very into the season, gone from Arizona, coming to us. Now he's got a full off season, a full preseason with a defensive coordinator who we think and hope that he will use him the correct way. That's why I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, man. And I think, the fact that he came in so late last season didn't help. Obviously, the whole situation with Wink, how long that sort of relationship between Wink and Davis was fragmented for, I don't know. But now that that Shane Bowen can work with him and mold him and coach him and guide him to become the player that he's got the potential to be, it'd be amazing to see this guy that's had struggled in Arizona for 4 years or 3.5 years, whatever he did, 4 years, and then came to us sort of for next to nothing really. Let's face it, 7th round draft pick is you just throw it away sometimes. So like I said, I really think this could be a sort of potential breakout season for him.
Mm-hmm. And he's only 25.
Yeah, so there's a hell of a lot more players out there with more tread on the tires than him.
Exactly. So, but the good thing is those three names, as a sort of linebackers 1 through 3, it's not a bad situation to be in, really. Let's face it. All right, moving further down the depth chart, we have Matthew Adams. Started off at Indy. It's been a steady decline from his time at Indianapolis. And in 2023 in Cleveland, he continued his move from sort of heavy defensive contributor to what is now as a predominant special teamer. He appeared in 10 games last season on the defense for Cleveland, but with only one start. He recorded 96 total snaps and 9 total tackles, which goes to show his production on defense has definitely dropped off the face of a cliff. On special teams, though, he was a mainstay throughout the whole season across 17 regular season games and 1 postseason game. He recorded 435 snaps, 10 tackles, 1 assisted, and a forced fumble against the Jets in Week 17. But despite some high tackling numbers from some of our special teams linebackers over the last few seasons, we haven't been great. He might have seen the snap counts on defense take a hit, but the Giants are clearly looking for depth upgrades, and he'll probably offer more than last year's sort of special teams duo of Carter Coughlin and Cam Brown. But I still look for him to sort of contribute somewhat on defense when required, and I think he can contribute for sure. Talking of Carter Coughlin,
yes. Yeah, the player that we didn't think we would see back.
And it was a strange one as well.
Yeah, and also another player who started as a defensive contributor when he first came into the league and has switched to a special teamer. Coughlin had 2 snaps on defense in 2023 with the Giants, but 397 on special teams. Now, to his credit, he didn't complain, and he was very, very good, to be honest. 6th highest special teams grade on the season, and that includes players like Casey Kreiter, who should be getting a high grade regardless, and Leo Williams, who obviously didn't play that many snaps. So Coughlin did well, and he also led the Giants in tackles with 9 on special teams. So definitely a contributor. Now, Coughlin appeared to call time on his Giants career just after the season finale with an Instagram post. However, the Giants surprisingly brought him back. He'll get more competition this offseason for his specialist role with the aforementioned Matthew Adams, and obviously with a new special teams coordinator, Thomas, I've forgotten his name, McGahee? Yeah, he was obviously a favourite of his, as was Cam Brown. They were both pretty much mainstays on special teams while he was there. But now we have a new special team coordinator. He's going to have to prove himself to him because no one's going to get a free pass. And then Dan, round us out with the third player who we've already mentioned this evening.
We have our final selection in the 2022 draft, Darrian Beavers. I know Kevin and Shane, you were both quite high on Darrian Beavers when we drafted him, and we had discussions at length through post-draft about him. But it's been a tough couple of seasons for him. He originally started last year as that main competitor for the starting job next to Bobby O, but he ended up on the practice squad for almost the whole of last season, which is a bit of a shame really, because he showed a hell of a lot of potential during that sort of 2022 camp and into the pre-season as well. He was active for the final 2 games of last season, but only used on special teams and only played 37 snaps, so he didn't get much game time at all. And I said he looked like a real contributor in the preseason after he was drafted. Then obviously he tore his ACL, which was really disappointing for him and disappointing for us as well. But last year the coaching staff didn't think his knee was there or was where it needed to be. So obviously the push to practice squad was made. But hopefully he can show the traits that led many to believe he'd be a draft steal. But up against Coughlin, Adams, and a rookie, he could get lost in the shuffle a little bit. But both Adams and Coughlin have experience on defense, whereas Beavers is still waiting for meaningful snaps. Do you think it's another case of worrying depth on the defense, who seem to get great at starter but very hit and miss, Kev?
I would like one more linebacker to sort of make a good top 4, if you know what I mean. I'm hoping one of these players will be able to do it. I mean, we're very high on Darrian Beavers coming out. The only real knock on Darrian Beavers was his injury history, and that seems to have followed him into the league, which is a shame. And he's sort of behind. He's sort of got left behind a little bit. We were higher on Beavers than we were McFadden in that draft. But I think Adams and Coughlin are purely special teams players. Can they give you some defensive snaps? I'm not sure. But I say I'm worried a little bit. Like I said, I'm very happy with the top 3, and I would have liked one more linebacker that you could really see give meaningful snaps on defense.
And Craig, do you think now his knee's healthy, or if his knee is healthy, should I say, do you think based off of this rookie camp, he's got something to offer, or do you think he's got to show a lot more to be with a chance?
We just have to really hope that he's been a sponge on the practice squad and really picked up like the nuances of the position. And now all he needs to do is put that into practice. Now, we all know that that's easier said than done. And it's very, very different when you're kind of, in live reps. But yes, ACLs are weird, aren't they? Some players come back from ACLs and look just as good. Some players come back from ACLs and never look quite as good. They've lost a step. Now, if they obviously didn't think that he was where they needed to be last year, as you said, will he be improved this year? Well, it's hard to say. I think the only kind of knock on him is the fact that he is going to be further down. He's going to have to prove more than the others. And that can sometimes be an uphill battle to start with. It's tough, but it's either going to be. It feels kind of like it's either going to be another practice squad or it could be nothing. And it sucks. It really does suck because it's through no fault of his own.
No, exactly. I think time will tell in camp, but it seems like he's struggled with this recovery from this ACL. Yeah, James, thanks for your comment, mate. Heard it a few times that the second season tends to be when the full recovery from an ACL is seen. Maybe we see the Beavers that we heard rave reviews about from training camp in his rookie season. Yeah, I mean, we hope so. We hope so, because having that number 4 linebacker would definitely be a good thing. Obviously, we've got 2 other names on the list that are potentially vying for that position as well. Craigie's up next.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to butcher this, but there we go. Darius Muasau. Yeah, see, I remembered. Thank you, Kev.
Muasau.
So during his second season with the Bruins, he recorded 618 snaps with 75 total tackles, 5 pass deflections, 4 sacks, and an interception. His grades in overall defense, run defense, tackling, and coverage were all career highs, and his 85.7 coverage grade was a massive improvement, being a full 20 above his previous career high. However, there are still improvements to come, as 160 of the 171 yards he allowed came after contact. A few of his stats here, I won't read out the sort of rankings because, as we've spoken about before, college players, there are hundreds of them and you just get lost in the shuffle. But 52 solo tackles, 21 assisted, 14.1% missed tackle rate, 18 pressures, 74.3 run defense grade. Here's the interesting thing. He allowed a passer rating of 103.9, yet his coverage grade was 85.7. So, I'm not quite sure how those two tally up together, but there we go. No expectations. Joe Shane's draft picks have a history of making the roster, with every single pick he has made in the main draft, not including undrafted rookie free agents, have all made the roster later that season. And with Muasau, this will likely continue if he has a strong camp and cleans up his zone coverage skills. He's an attack-minded linebacker that would have fit perfectly under Wink Martindale and his gung-ho defense, but with Bowen's reliance on coverage abilities, it could be that he's used more sparingly and more of like an impact player. Kev, you will obviously know more about him than Dan will with your sort of draft coverage. He saw limited experience at UCLA on special teams, but was a standout there during his early years at Hawaii. Do you think he'll benefit more from being on the active roster, getting experience, than maybe a practice squad, which you tend to see sometimes with these lower picked rookies?
Yeah, I do. I think because obviously the special teams coordinator coached him at Hawaii. So obviously that might have been a pick with a nod to special teams this coming year. So that gives him a great chance of making the 53-man roster. I think he's a little bit undersized. I think he's 6'6" for a linebacker, but he does have a nose for the ball. And I think when you have those kind of instincts, you can kind of coach up the rest. So I think, I do think he'll make 53. That might be a bit of a shock, but I think he'll make 53, and not just because Shane keeps his picks, but I think he'll learn it in camp, and I'm looking forward to seeing them in preseason games. And preseason games is perfect for these type of all these linebackers to really go out and make a mark. So, I will be looking at all position groups, but I will be keeping an eye out for linebacker especially.
Dan, what are your thoughts on the benefits of active roster versus practice squad for maybe some of these players who have flashes?
I think any rookie would benefit from being on the active roster rather than the practice squad, as you'd attend all linebacker meetings and get those sort of reps during practice. But as I think you said on the pod last week, Craig, being on the practice squad isn't a bad thing. It just means you need a little bit more development and a little bit more time to develop your skills and hone your skills. And so the coach believe he has something to offer when when it comes to run throughs in practice and everything like that, because that's what the practice squad are for. They're there to mold that game plan and help shape that game plan. So when it goes into game day, they're ready to rock. So I think I think he will make the roster as well. Believe it or not, I think he'll squeak in there, whether it's number 4, number 5, maybe even 6. Who knows how many linebackers will take on the roster this year? But I do think he'll get on there. It's interesting as well. Obviously, he was picked 182nd, wasn't he, this year? And we've got Darrian Beavers on the squad, who was picked 183rd in his draft class. So there's 2 6th-round draft picks there vying for a position on the roster. I'm looking forward to seeing the competition just between those two, let alone the rest of the competition there. But I do think he's got the talent. And like you said, Joe Shane likes to stick with his picks and go with them. So I definitely think he could make the roster. Cool.
And then the last man.
Last but not least, Dyontae Johnson. So last year, limited play in the preseason as an off-ball linebacker didn't translate to a roster spot. He spent the whole season on the practice squad with no call-ups. Expectations for this year: he could benefit from the new kickoff rule due to his athleticism and collegiate experience, but it's unlikely that the Giants would have a player on the roster that's so pigeonholed. It could be another practice squad year depending on the success of others. Let's have a look back at the last few years then, Producer Craig.
Yep, so I'll skip the contract places because obviously we're an hour and a half in, but we'll go through the previous rosters. So 2020, which was Gettleman, Blake Martinez, Lorenzo Carter, Tay Crowder, Marcus Golden, and Carter Coughlin. As long as 2020.
Blake Martinez, absolute baller.
What a baller who ended up committing Pokemon card fraud.
Selling Pokemon cards, yeah.
It's such a weird. Didn't he sign with a team?
Yeah, I thought the Raiders, was it?
Yeah. I thought it was.
Well, he went to the Raiders after he left the Giants, didn't he?
Not for long, though.
And then he retired to become a Pokemon card trader, which is just, give me sentences you never thought you'd hear on an NFL podcast.
He obviously thought it was a good idea at the time.
Yes. So 2021, Blake Martinez again, Lorenzo Carter, Reggie Ragland, Quincy Roche, Justin Hilliard, and Cam Brown. 2022 was the return of Tay Crowder, Austin Calitro, Micah McFadden, Carter Coughlin, and Cam Brown. And then last year, Okereke, McFadden, Coughlin, Isaiah Simmons, and Cam Brown. So definitely a better linebacker core than 2020 and 2021 under Dave Gettleman. But if we kind of have a look at the projection there, under the Giants, or should I say under Joe Shane's Giants for the last 2 seasons, we've carried significantly less linebackers on the roster than we did under Gettleman. Shane typically carries 5, whereas Gettleman typically carried 7. Now, Dan, do you think this is due to the lack of quality depth that the Giants have had? Or do you think that there's an argument we should have more so we can get more experience for these younger players who need meaningful snaps in order to get better?
I think it probably is down to quality depth. That's to some extent. But I think it would definitely be beneficial to the younger guys to carry more linebackers on the roster. But it would also mean that other positions would not have as many players. But I think 5 is a good number. You've got 2 starters, 3 backups, rotational pieces, whatever, special team guys as well. But I think it would be good to have an additional 1 at least, just to give you that extra piece, and also have that special teamer there as well. So I think maybe probably because we had the lack of quality at depth, I think maybe is the reason why I went for 5 last year. and the year before. And I wouldn't be surprised if we did carry an extra linebacker into this season either. So yeah.
Kev, if you look at the 2022 and 2021 rosters that I read out, I don't think quality is a word that you could use really for a lot of those players outside of Blake Martinez. So do you really think it makes that much of a difference? Or is it purely down to the players that you've got and the quality that you've got?
Yeah, it is. I mean, like, just one little note as well. I think the earlier ones with Gettleman, with Zoe Carter and Marcus Golden, they were more like outside linebackers as opposed to off-ball linebackers. But I do think 5 is kind of the sweet spot, although I really do agree with Dan that maybe this year we'll carry 6, an extra one, purely because I kind of see Simmons and McFadden as like joint starters. So they're kind of joint starters, and then you'd have like backups, but then you need to be able to play special teams. I do think the quality was seriously lacking in the past years. I really do believe that. And I'm kind of hoping that, like I said earlier, like the top 3 is sort of top 3 heavy, and the rest kind of like show me. You need to show me, because there's massive question marks after those 3. So maybe it's a case of just a league in general. It's very difficult to get good linebackers in this league, let alone good backups. So it will be interesting to see how the back roster of linebackers perform in preseason.
Yeah, just interestingly as well, we're talking about Blake Martinez. He was actually with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year and started 1 game.
He tried to make a comeback, didn't he?
Yeah, started 1 game. Had 4 total tackles.
Payables, court fees.
Yeah, and he's now a free agent as well. So there you go. Who knew? I didn't know that. But there we go. But no, I think having 6 linebackers on the roster this year might be a nice number. Joe Shane, if you're listening, what do you reckon? Do you think having 1 more space on the roster to help with that depth? Do you think that's a good thing?
I personally, I'm really interested to see the kickoff rule. I'm looking to see the kickoff rule, what type of players you have in the field, because before the longer kicks you had more like athletic players. Do you get more bulky linebackers because you're only 10 yards apart now, and then when the receiver catches the ball, you just go. So it's kind of like, so would you have sort of like less safeties and more linebackers to cover those sort of like positions? So it'd be really interesting to see how the special teams back end the roster is formulated this year with these new kickoff rules.
Yeah, it's more of a focus in actual blocking than kind of half-ass blocking, isn't it? There's very much going to be a shift there between trying to open up lanes quicker and trying to stop it from being so much more compact. And the fact that you can also then have 2 returners kind of opens up another dynamic. So it's going to be a very, very fine balance between speed and stoppers.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to seeing this new kickoff rule in play.
It might be very vanilla though in preseason. People might not want to show their hand, or they might just be trying loads of new things, like to see what works, what doesn't. So we'll be interested to see it then.
Yeah, preseason is going to be like the sort of the trial, isn't it? It's going to be like, different teams are going to be trying different things all over the place. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. All right then, there you go. That's our linebacker state of play in the books. I'm looking forward to seeing the competition behind Bobby Okereke this season during camp. Lots to look forward to. There's some great names on that list, and there's some spots to fight for on that roster. Unfortunately, though, that is all we have time for this week. We'll be back live next Wednesday to look at our safeties and our special teams. Yay, special teams! Plus, we'll be reviewing episode 4 of Hard Knocks off season as well. So make sure you tune in for that. Anything else to add before we go, guys?
No, just like really good to be on with you lads tonight. Really enjoyed this episode. Hard Knocks is it's so nice to have sort of this content through this sort of like lull period, this like dead period in the league. We have real stuff to talk about. I mean, the state of play is fantastic and everything, and that's really good to look at the roster. But to have this juicy off-season Hard Knocks is like, I've been really, really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also bear in mind that next week will be the last episode that we have before everyone's at camp. So the news will start to ramp up as we come on past that. And so next week is really kind of like our last opportunity to really focus on Hard Knocks and the state of plays in as much depth. The week after we'll be rounding out with cornerbacks, and who knows what kind of news we're going to get. We could have new signings, we could have injuries,
yeah.
we could have anything, couldn't we? Well, we will have injuries. It's the Giants.
I mean, this week we've been linked to Xavier Howard already. This week,
God,
Yeah,
I'd take it. Even if it means a last edition to do some research on cornerbacks, I'll take it.
yeah, mate.
Actually, how many cornerbacks have we bloody got? Lots.
Quite a few. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, we're only 50 days away from the season starting. We're 2 weeks away from the Hall of Fame game.
Ravens versus the Chiefs, I think, is 50 days, isn't it?
Yeah.
I did see on Sunday.
Less than 2 months.
Sunday just gone. The Lord and Saviour Red Zone Octobox, 8 weeks' time.
Yeah, mate.
Love an Octobox.
it's only 4 weeks to the first preseason game, lads.
Yeah, exactly. I
quick.
can't believe how quickly it's come around. But like you said, Kev, it's been great to have. Obviously it's only been the last 3 weeks, but it's been great to have this extra dimension and be able to chat about Hard Knocks, and it just sort of drives our passion for this sport and this team even more. And it's just been great to watch and great to talk about, and with guys that watch this podcast regularly. It's just great to talk about everything that's been going on. So yeah, I mean, the next 4 weeks we've got a lot to look forward to. So roll on camp and roll on preseason. But we'll be here with you every week to bring you the latest Giant news. I'm looking forward to bringing camp news, put it that way as well. As I said at the top, you can check out all of our socials, including TikTok and Twitch as well. Follow the links in the description. Give this episode a big thumbs up and feel free to share it too. Been a good one this evening, lads. My thanks as ever go to both Kev and Craig for joining me. To those watching and listening, we are signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.